right. Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Ben Blanquera with Rackspace Technology, a leading provider of multi-cloud services for firms on the data and analytics modernization journey. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Alowaish, Chief Data and Innovation Officer at Gulf Bank. Good afternoon, Mai. How are you?
Hi, Ben. It's good to talk to you, and I'm excited to be here with CDO Magazine.
My gosh, yeah, it's as we were talking when we were prepping, it's been 3 years since we saw each other, and my things have changed. So
Oh yeah, I've changed.
let's get right to it. So Mike, can you tell us a little about yourself, your role, and your career path?
Sure. So, May Alowaish, Chief Data and Innovation Officer at Gulf Bank. I am the first generation data officer at Gulf Bank, meaning that I had to start the data practice in Gulf Bank, and a year in after that, I was tasked with starting the innovation practice as well. Now, 10 years prior to that, I was working in the United States where I worked with data analytics and mainly e-commerce analytics with multiple kind of Google partners and marketing consultants. Prior to that, I was back in Kuwait right here, and I was working with banks mainly in e-commerce, where back then there was no such thing as data. It was more about online banking, and everything sat in databases we never analyzed or monetized. But I've seen the shift from e-commerce to data to analytics to like very much data driven, and it's been quite a ride.
I can only imagine. I'm curious, since you both worked in the United States and in Kuwait, Middle East, like what is from a data sort of perspective or technology, what kind of differences do you see, if any, about how they look at data, how they think about it?
I mean, and the difference between the two markets, honestly, I think is that when we talk about privacy, I think both of them, the privacy is always a weird thing when it comes to data and monetization. I think in the United States, it was mainly kind of companies were trying to really catch up and monetize the data ASAP.
Okay.
Back, when I went back to Kuwait and in the Middle East, it was the monetization was not part of the kind of the initial plans. It was more like here we're starting really the data governance heavier. The focus
Okay.
is not monetization as much as data governance, as much as getting the right stuff. And maybe because I'm in the banking sector where it's governance and insights are, we have a heavy governance through central banks and all of that.
Yeah.
So I think I've seen the fruits when I was in the States of data, which getting the monetization and all of that. Where right here I'm seeing kind of the gears and the back end when we're trying to govern and set up and do all of that before we monetize. Because
Okay.
when you were working with banks, it's different when e-commerce, the regulations really kind of make a difference.
Yeah, I would think so. Let's back up a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about, Gulf Bank, what it does, and kind of what's its mission.
Yeah, so Gulf Bank is, we have our mission and vision to be the bank of the future.
Okay.
And as Gulf Bank, we were one of the largest banks in Kuwait, with around 50-some branches all over the country. We are, largely a retail bank, so we have a big customer base, but we also have a corporate customers as well, and treasury and all. In terms of Gulf Bank, we started kind of in early 2021, and that's when I started with Gulf Bank. Gulf Bank has announced its main kind of digital transformation plans with a major rehaul of many systems and many approaches. And that was when our data office was actually established, and I was hired with the charge of starting the data office, because it was the whole, becoming customer centric, which is happening all over the world, of course, needed to have the right data, the right things, the right systems in place, and the right people. So that's when Gulf Bank is becoming data driven, and we had even a hashtag of data driven across all our business units, because it is that you want even marketing people to look at their data before deciding about campaign. You want anybody who's granting a loan or doing anything to be very much have the data at their fingertips before they do anything, and to serve the customer with the right things.
Got it. Got it. I'm curious. So you came in right at the starting point of sort of this. We're going to transform. We are going to be the bank of the future. What precipitated that? You know?
I think in a way that was actually, and based on what I learned when I came to Kuwait, is that this was a charge that was actually started earlier in 2019, 2018. But the pandemic hit, and a
Yeah.
lot of that got kind of put in snooze. Because a lot of the, working with external vendors, internal teams, it was just hard because the working remote is not as easy when it comes to a bank, because not a lot of the things are open for people outside and so on. So there's a lot of these regulations, but the digital transformation that was already started post pandemic, it was just kind of, they had to accelerate much harder.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they said, you know what, we need to start setting up things. We can't wait. And market overall is digitally transforming because the customer is transforming. Our customer
Gotcha.
expects much more digitally. Our
Mm-hmm.
customers, and one thing I noticed going back to the difference of markets, when you go to an online banking in Kuwait, customers expect much more. They want to treat
Really?
their online banking as the Amazon app. We can do everything. We don't want to go to the branch, As some of the regulations that I saw here are a bit different. I can't do as much versus there you can do as much instantaneously. And that's because of the high customer expectations. Banks got to catch up and meet those expectations.
That's really interesting because we CDO is a global audience. One of the things we try to sort of flesh out is when you start looking at the global marketplace, there are differences in expectations
Oh,
and from what we've seen in the Mid East and sort of the Far East, the sort of online, the ability to interact and do things on your phone is a ton higher in many
oh yeah,
cases.
oh yeah. Like doing transfers, and they want to do it instantaneously, and there is no such thing that I have to wait, or there's limits of transfers, monthly transfers. They can be kind of changed, based on customer consent. You can consent to transfer your transfer limits to be much higher, and that's okay. Something that I've never was able to be to do
Okay.
with the local bank when I was in Ohio. So it's a bit different.
Yeah.
But I think every market has its own regulations. Every market has its own customer style and expectations, like I said.
So you're a first time CDO that says,
Mhm.
"Hey, we're gonna be doing this digital transformation." Take me through like in your mind, like when you first landed and your first day, like, okay, here's my game plan. Here's the things I got to put in place for it to be successful. What was going through your mind?
Yeah, it was a bit, challenging to be the first generation CDO, because at the beginning, um, some people will expect you to be kind of the go-to person, where this
Mm-hmm.
is new, to many banks. When I was starting my CDO practice, a lot of the CDOs that I met were also first generation CDO. So there's no
Yep.
reference CDO to go back to in banking. And especially like some companies, we're having CDOs for a while, but banks kind of like caught up later to this about
Yep.
setting up the data office. So I met at the same time, I met two other CDOs. And I remember, I think through CDO Max, or I was on a panel with them. But anyway, so I was talking, okay, so this is my first role. And I was asking about their background, and they've done exactly the same. They were in e-commerce. And so when one of
Okay.
them actually worked with the Google partner before, I'm like, okay, then I'm doing the right thing and we're on the right track. I have
Okay.
the right profile. But
Okay.
I mean, because in e-commerce, we took a lot of kind of a very data-centric approach to put data and make money out of it. So I think that's one of the things that when I started was, am I doing the right thing? I grabbed a few books. One of them was the CDO Journey. One was called the Getting in Front with Data. So grabbing some of these books. But then I remember one of the things that I wanted to do is like, what are the expectations? And I had to work with management to say, what are you expecting from
Right.
data?
Right.
You know? And of course, the first thing that jumps to their mind is, oh, data science, we need to do AI. And I'm like, okay, now let's draw the roadmap to go to AI.
Okay. Okay.
You got to start with data governance, setting up the actual data lakes and all of that, and then you'll get to AI, where there was a already data warehouse happening, and it was kind of sitting under IT and all, but the actual practice of let's take the
Mhm.
data and monetize it, let's take the data and analyze it. Let's not just talk about reports, because banks can do too much with just end of day and end of month reports that just go to the regulator or go to some management and that's it. But not really to decide much. It's more of the after the fact things. It's not about real
Mm.
time. So that was the big thing that I said, oh no, this is how you do it? Okay, so let me show you how it's done back in e-commerce, you know? So
Okay.
the main charge, honestly, when I saw, I had to kind of sit for a month and kind of talk to a lot of management and talk to many team leaders and business across. And a lot of the outcome was that, they look at data as end of month. But what I wanted to change is how can we become data driven? That's the hashtag that we come to, is that as
Okay.
a manager, you have to become data driven. As an employee, you have to become data driven. Let's show you how. So it was I spent probably the first 9 to 12 months teaching and just teaching and teaching and teaching. At all levels, we're teaching employees, we're teaching analysts in the bank, and then I'm actually working with management to kind of show them what they can and can't do with data. How do they expect data to be? How can they actually take the right decisions with data? So, as I mentioned, the first year was mainly educating about the value of
Okay.
data, educating that this is not a report, there's more of analytics and insights and becoming data driven. I think by the second or third year, which is now we're actually getting people who are, becoming data driven. The other day was the kind of the cherry on top. I walked unannounced in our dealing room, and we had some dashboards built for them to look at market values and things like this, kind of 20 years, analyzing 20 years of data.
Yeah.
And you know how they have like tons of screens in front of them in the dealing room. And one of those screens was that big dashboard, and he was browsing it before he actually books the deal. And I was like, okay, you are definitely data driven. And I think right now we're seeing the results of what we built in the past 2 years.
Gotcha. So let me sort of just summarize, because I'm taking notes and because we try to get playbooks, right? So if first time CDO, what I heard is, read a lot, talk to peers, get informed, spend a lot of time talking to your internal folks, just
Mm-hmm.
to and recognize that the first year is all about, you know, educating folks with, here's what the roadmaps look like, here's what you can expect, here's the steps. You can't do AI if you don't have data literacy, right? It's sort of like you can't run it before you walk.
Exactly.
Kind of notion. I'm just curious. Do you have a set of pitch decks? Did you have literally a set of
Oh,
here's my 101 pitch deck, here's my 201 pitch deck, my 301 pitch deck? Did you have a
oh yeah.
set of those?
I had a folder on my computer when I started first, and I call it kind of sales package or something, because I have
Okay.
at some point, especially for executives, you got to go and sell the data, because
Yeah.
I'm asking them to, get their teams to invest some time to learn some stuff. Now, to
Mm-hmm.
take their teams and teach them, I was willing to do the hours and teach them. That's part of my role as a CDO, to teach
Yeah.
up everybody, to teach up the management, the teams, but they gotta be interested in it. They gotta have the mandate from their top manager that,
Yeah.
you gotta go and learn this so you can help us become data driven. So I had to sell that to the top executives. So I had those pitch decks for executives, and then kind of the secondary or top line managers, I had different, to show them
Okay.
how it will affect their day-to-day lives. Because showing the value of data is about what's in it for me. Why should I listen to you? Why should I give you my team member
Mm-hmm.
to teach him and change the practice? So part of those sales or pitch decks that I've done. Then there was when we actually ran the program. So we ran at the beginning when I started, after selling data, I told the managers, your charge right now is to nominate people from your teams, could be the business analysts or people who can drive change, because driving data programs is about driving change. There's a lot of culture change. When I tell
Mm.
you, don't take this decision based on your experience or hunch, just look at the data. It's a culture. So once they nominated those people, which we call them the data ambassadors, so that was kind of the
Okay.
flagship program for our data stewards, or what I call them my extended data team.
Okay.
So there was a third pitch deck for the ambassadors to convince them that, you'll be part of this program, you'll be the extended data team member, you
Okay.
are in charge of making your department or business unit as data driven as possible.
Okay.
And this is what you need to do. So there was an investment, there was an effort on their side. So we had to sell it and also show them what's in it for them to be part of this program. And of course, we made this program, we showed them a lot of the value for them. Plus, we also made it fun. There was a lot of giveaways that we've done. There was a lot of, we give them some of the digital notebooks that they do just to make them, kind of understand that they are part of a bigger change that's happening in the bank.
Yeah, let's probe that, because you've got this philosophy of everyone should be part of the change. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and how do you make that happen?
Definitely. So to me, if we're trying to do culture change across the bank, if I'm at the bank trying to be data driven, it has to be really grassroots. I can't be in a single unit calling myself the data office and then analyzing and running data practices for every business department. First, I don't have the business knowledge of every business department.
Right.
Second, they might just not use my services every time they need it.
Okay.
But if it's part of their team, if they have the knowledge and abilities as part of their team, they are able to probably get a taste of it, and then they'll be addicted, I'm sure. So the idea was, and what we did the approaches, 1 out of 10 in every team members have to be a data ambassador. So if you have 20 people, you got to be 2 ambassadors. Some departments, we did not go by that rule because they were all analysts. For example, if you're talking about finance departments, 90% of them were data ambassadors. So, there is always, there is a rule of thumb, and then there is exceptions for certain units like risk and people who are purely analysts units. But the 1 out of 10 carried for everyone, all the other business departments. You crunch some data for sure. You do some reportings. I know that. Even if you don't, give me an ambassador, 1 out of 10, because at some point you're going to have to deal with some data. So we had, and at the beginning, I remember when we started the program, I said, if I get 50 or 60 ambassadors, that would be great. But I think my pitch or sales pitch was so good that I got 140.
What?
So, yes, it was overwhelming. I was like, oh my God. Now we gotta train, all of our training plans got doubled, and we had to break them into classes and different groups. And then the key there that I had very good partnership with our HR team, because HR does the training and development, and training 140 people is not something that, I would be able to do solo.
Yeah.
So their training and development program, I had to also pitch that greatly to them, and how this is a big learning programs and adding value and so on. And we're doing this internally. So they were really worked with me hand in hand in running this like little academy that we did for the data ambassadors. It was like a 6 sessions program where they've learned first data quality. They've learned about kind of how do we do data cleansing, because we had, everyone has data quality issues to work with.
Yeah.
Some automation, insight. Then we learned some Tableau on the way, and even quality improvement cycles. So there was a little bit of a curriculum that was made. There was that we did sessions, multiple sessions and classes and so on. But once we were done with the program, we even did a graduation party for these ambassadors, because we wanted them to be proud ambassadors to help their units then say, hey, let me help you with that data. Let me show you how this is done. When their manager asked a question, he would dig the data and show them the reports, or to look at this real time. Because then the managers would trust their employees, because they're part of them, they're part of the business. That's how we drove the change across all units.
I got you. That's pretty impressive. I'm curious. So let's get back to your setting expectations with your boss, the CEO, right? Like when they ask you the question, we are buying into the Kool-Aid here that you're selling. It makes total sense. Can you articulate for me, like, what are the top ways, like what things, where does your team create the most value? Like, what are the top key things that someone go, okay, that matters?
I mean, so one of the things, and these kind of, we had to create values or set our what kind of value can it bring in different phases, because at the beginning was mainly setup. So the value that we created there is, let's have some data quality, because a lot of the data quality measures, when we did some sample measures of quality, we're not, and we looked at worldwide, there was everyone was suffering of the same. So we needed to be ahead of that. So the first thing I said, if we bring that measure, that we're gonna make sure that we do some major data cleansing, because we're going through some migration. So before we migrate the data, let's clean it up. But I can't clean the data, the ambassadors will, because they know what's right and what's wrong. They can tell me what kind of data goes into what. So the creating value was one, kind of boost the data quality index.
Okay, got it.
Number two was people in business units don't come back to our office for, I want this support or I want to build this. So they can be self-serve.
Self-serve. Okay, got it.
So the becoming self-serve, some business units did not buy into it because what? Why are you here then? But I'm like, listen, we work for the common good. So some business units bought into it, and that's when we made a great story out of it. So the others then kind of followed suit.
Okay.
So the self-serve was also a big thing that we wanted to add. And then the third thing was, that we have some kind of new insights to bring to the business. For example, how can we do some cost cutting with, using the data? Where are the things that we could, offer to customers? Personalized experience was one of that we're going to set some stuff, but this will be kind of a phase 2 thing, that we want to personalize the customer experience with data.
Gotcha. As you look at the next couple of years for your office, and you know what? Maybe let's back up. You have another office too. You have an innovation office, right? So
yes.
I don't want to forget about that before we just focus on data. You have a very unique kind of role. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of this dual hat role?
Yeah. It was, so my first year was Gulf Bank was purely setting up the data office. And I think the grassroots change that we've done, and like I said, the culture change that was done through the data ambassador program, have, the success of it, I think, landed me the other office, which is the innovation office. And we didn't just come up with it. It was actually a mandate from our Central Bank of Kuwait to set up an innovation office in every single bank. So banks were required to do it. But given the nature of innovation, that it's also a culture change, it's also the new way innovation is not, not the old kind of setup and kind of a research and development, what they call the R&D. We have few people sitting, researching and developing, and then come up with ideas. The new way of innovation is that innovation comes from everyone, especially the people in the science, because these are the people in the face of the customer. Innovation is listening to the customer need, really. You start with the need, and then how do you bring value through that need? So when we set up that, and I said, you realize that I need to also work with everyone. I'm not going to work solo. Just like we did the ambassadors, we're going to work with the innovators. But the innovators are not 1 out of 10. It's going to be everybody. Everyone has to participate in this. So we actually, at that time specifically, I was planning to do a data literacy program, which meant I will have to meet everyone in the bank to do some data literacy learning. And I can come back to that later. But then what I did is, at the end of data literacy program, we spent 10 minutes talking about innovation. And I said, and I told them that innovation comes from everybody, from top executive all the way to the bank teller, to the mailman, to security guard, to everybody. And we can bring products in terms of customer products, improving internal operations or services and all. And that the way we'll do that is that we'll have this centralized operation where, you bring in the ideas, we validate them based on, what we call, the need and the value that it brings. And, basically the how, the what, and why we're doing this. And then the way we're going to kind of bring hype around this, to bring people to get excited about submitting product. We don't want to teach it as a suggestion box, like let's do this. No, we want to make sure that when you submit an idea, you actually did some research around it. What is the need? Why you want to do this? Because if we choose to pick up the idea and process it, you will work with us as the business expert, or we'll bring in more business experts. So we ran also a company called the Innovation Tournament, where everyone participated. We had a lot of participation from our front lines because they know what the customer wants. They hear the customer in the call center. They interact with the customer in the branch. So a lot of these were part of that innovation tournament, and it was a big tournament. We've done it as like at a fun place in a park, but people did their pitches and they,
Wow.
got the ideas. We've done an innovation 101. So it was really an event to bring hype around innovation. And once the event was done, I think post-event, we've heard more ideas and people starting submitting more ideas because, oh, so everybody can innovate, everybody can submit ideas. And that's, the nature of innovation is that a culture change, kind of the success of data kind of brought this to also like, okay, it can be done, let's do it. And we've got the fruits of it. Like I said, once we run the innovation, we've got a lot of ideas and we still get every day.
Okay. I'm just curious, you have any specific success stories to share either from the data end or innovation end or data-driven innovation end that,
Sure.
have impacted, revenues or customers or something?
Not all of them I can share publicly, but
Okay, of
I
course.
think around the data quality, which
Okay.
obviously share. For example, I was talking about running the data literacy. So we
Yep.
run the data literacy program where we talk to everyone in the bank and we did like a 1 hour session and we made sure it's just 1 hour and
Yep.
everybody had to go through this literacy program. And we've done it around, because we had around over 1,000 people. So we've
Wow.
done it
Okay.
around 8 to 10 weeks. We've done like
Okay.
1 hour sessions having to fit different schedules and all. But the
Okay.
concept we tried to build is you're either a data customer or a data creator. And these concepts were right out of the book of Tom Redman, Getting in Front of with Data. And
Okay.
as a data creator, you create data. You're either filling out a customer form, you're submitting a complaint on behalf of the customers, but you are creating a data point.
Mm-hmm.
And you, as a data creator, you have a data customer, which is the next in line reading your data, looking at your data to make a decision. So customers and creator has certain responsibilities that the creator has to put in the right data. The customer has to use the data ethically, but also report if it has wrong data and so on. But anyway, long story short, we've run this program 3 months and, everyone went through it, top management all the way to tellers and call center agents and everyone. And what we also maintain that anybody who's onboarded as a new employee does the same thing, the same data quality, or we call the data literacy. And then randomly one day at the bank, I was getting in the elevator, and then there's this young guy. He gets in and he goes like, "Oh, Miss May, I was part of the data literacy program a few months ago." I said, "Yeah." He says, "I work in direct sales, so I just go and make the sale and fill out the customers." And since we've done that training, every time I fill out a customer form, I make sure that every single point in the address is correct and the phone numbers and everything, because I know there's a customer of that data somewhere waiting for it.
Oh my gosh, you had to be like, oh, my day is complete.
Exactly.
I was like,
exactly. Because like I never realized that everybody's waiting for me, the sales agent, to do this. But it made a difference right now. No field goes blank,
Well, that's a win.
Exactly.
When someone understands their role and their importance and they take it seriously, that's a win, Meg.
It was a great win. And it's, somebody who's has nothing to do with data. It's just a sales agent. And he was just a young guy, maybe, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 years in the job or something. I don't exactly remember. But like you said, he made my day by saying this. And this was way post the training. So the fact
he
that
remembered it stuck.
Exactly.
my gosh. So like, I love the notion, like, a basic concept, you're either a creator or a customer, and you have roles that you play, and it doesn't have to be that complex, right?
No, yeah. And I always like tell Tom Redmond that, you made these concepts so easy. And I think he made my job so much easy to go and to talk to everyone in the bank. And I was telling when there was top management as part of these data literacy sessions, I said, you're the top management. You are the biggest customers because every data that comes in and it gets aggregated and comes to you as a final report. So you're a customer and your creators are all over the bank. And when I go to the creators, like for tellers, I say, you can't imagine how many customers you have for your data. Everybody reads the data and everybody's waiting for you to put in the right data. And that's when they think, oh my God, we have much bigger responsibilities.
Exactly. That you made them feel important. They're doing something that matters. That's pretty cool. I'm curious, I've talked to a lot of CDOs and there's some CDOs that that technically they like to build their own stuff, and then there's some that like to buy you sort of
Mm,
off the shelf package. What's your philosophy on sort of like technical things, stacks of tools?
I mean, for tools, yeah, I'd like to buy and get ready tools because I don't like to re-engineer the wheel.
Okay.
But when it comes to like the learning and the culture, I'll be honest with you, when we ran the data ambassadors program, we ran the data literacy program, it was all done in-house. Because
Okay.
in order to get to their brains, in order to get to them and make them do what we want them to do through these programs, it has to be very localized to the local culture, to the local
Okay.
people of Gulf Bank, to the
Hmm.
customers of Gulf Bank, to the products. Like all of our training had examples right from the bank, had data quality issues right from what we had even names of people who worked in the bank. Seriously, because and when we did the data literacy, it even got worse. I had like 20 versions of my data literacy program because when I gave the data literacy to salespeople, then the examples were all about sales. When I was talking to risk, then it was more different. When I was talking to HR, then it was all about, employee files and recruitment or something like that. So this cannot be purchased or done outside because it has
Gotcha.
to be very custom made. But when I'm talking about a tool or a stack or, for example, we use Tableau, we use Power BI and all of that stuff. No, I'd rather get ready packages and shorten the time of doing that.
Makes sense. So tools you can purchase, people and culture, do it. You got to own that.
I could not even outsource the training externally, to be honest with you. I'm not going to bring a training agency doing this. It has to be us internally doing it. And I think that's where a lot of the companies say, we'll hire this training company and then they'll do this data literacy for us. Maybe yes, can be done. In my own belief, I think if it's done internally and organically, it
Yeah.
will make the impact will be stronger, and the turnaround on actually seeing how culture change will be much faster because people trust their own people.
That is a pro tips. I'm gonna have to write that down. People trust your own people. You can't outsource that kind of stuff. I'm curious. The fact that you're data and innovation officer, what does that? How does that help or hinder? Like, do you think that's helpful,
At the
Joe?
beginning, I'll be honest with you, when they gave me the innovation kind of practice to build and start, I said, I don't know if they are related at all, but I'll run them and see if they can kind of separate out at some point. But then the more
Mm-hmm.
I've done it, the more like, they're actually my manager, the deputy CEO, made the right call of actually putting them together. Because whenever we get an idea for innovation or a new product or things we're validating, we're really pulling a lot of data to validate that idea.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what we see as insights from data or outliers or things that we find become seeds for innovation. So they're
Okay.
really feeding and supporting each other, the two units, and I have them in on our floor. They're sitting on two separate sides, but I see like people always walking around between the two sides. So there's a lot of collaboration in between,
Okay.
because how much data can tell you about the customer, in order to say yes, this works, or maybe you should do this.
Wow. Maybe you're setting a trend.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I've seen it happen more than I don't know. I know I've seen few people like analytics and innovation or that are mixed. But maybe it's a new trend. I don't know.
Maybe, well, maybe they're just acknowledging that, you do a pretty good job of getting people excited and motivated and feeling like, that they're part of something bigger. And maybe that's sort of the bigger picture around innovation.
Yeah, I mean the CEO did mention that at some point. He's like, yes, you know how to get to people.
See, I figured that out, right?
And I've heard it before. I remember that they told me that as CDO you just have to keep talking to other people. You're always collaborating. You're always in the face of other business units because a lot of collaboration and innovation has kind of a similar role because you don't work by yourself. Otherwise, you'll be a silo and nobody will take the product that you make. So you're always working with others. And I
Mhm.
think also it's the industrial engineer in me that, as industrial engineers, we never work solo. We always work with other engineers. So
Okay.
it's the type that as data or as innovation, be prepared to always be working with someone else. It's never your own project.
Okay. Here's a question for you. We have a lot of potential, CDOs in waiting that'll be listening to this. I'm curious if you're talking to your younger self 10, 15 years ago, What advice would you give your younger self, May?
Good question. Honestly, the advice that I would say is just, always keep up with the trends. Because in a market like data, in an industry like data, things are changing every single day. So one thing is that, I think I had that when I was in e-commerce. Things were changing every single day, and I
Yeah.
had to keep up with it. And I think that what got me into data too. And in data, you always got to keep up. There are
Hmm.
the trends are changing, the tools are changing, the lingo is changing. Went
Hmm.
from centralized analytics offices to distributed offices, but we
Hmm.
had to keep up and we had to catch up and change. And we always got to retool, we always got to reorganize and redo. So flexibility is a needed skill, and whatever you need to stay flexible, just do it. I think one
Okay.
other advice is just network. I don't think earlier in my job I didn't do a lot of networking, and I think probably I'm overdoing it right now, but I think it works because there's so much cross learning. It also helps you keep up with everything when you do the networking.
Absolutely. I believe it. There's so much information out there that it's almost like I have to put myself around other smart people who can help synthesize this for me. It's like all this, what does this mean?
Yes, yeah. You're doing it the easy way, and that's sometimes because there's not enough time to
there,
process all of
there's
it.
there's not enough time, and I'm a big proponent for innovation. People have to try things, and
Right.
the quicker you can learn
Correct.
from what works and what doesn't work, the
Yeah.
faster you can evolve to something special. So I'm curious, May. I know you are in you know learn. You said you got to learn, so you're going to conferences, you're networking. Do you have outside of do you have a special thing that you do to keep up? Do you read certain things? Do you like certain habits that help you
Oh,
learn?
LinkedIn keeps me kind of up to date with a lot of things, especially
Okay.
with my network, because a lot of the events that I came to know of or something is really through LinkedIn. But
Okay.
one thing that honestly a habit that I don't know I've started long time back when I started my career, but it's always that even if I not do it for a while, I try to come back to it is volunteer. Always do some volunteer work. It helps you kind of get to know the other side. Like if you mentor somebody or if volunteer to help in some other events or something, it always helps you stay up to date or see the other side, which we don't do in your job. Just see a whole different perspective. So always make time for volunteer. Always keep up to date with the and then I try to get up at least a book every quarter, at least one.
Okay, there you
Yeah.
go. A book a quarter.
Yes, I mean, because sometimes some books I have to read because I need to, but I mean, it just, you know, and that's sometimes on LinkedIn, you see like the top 10 reads or things
Yeah.
that you look at, but just pick one and don't do too much pressure that you have to read too much. But just,
See.
keeping, sometimes you read a book that leads you to another book.
Okay. Well, see, I love this. See, what I just learned is when you know, if you're starting out and you want data stewards, 1 out of 10, right? Each department needs to offer 1 out of 10, unless,
Yeah.
they're a finance department and everyone needs to be a data steward, right? Got it. And then one book a quarter. See, we've got some pretty specific, like it's not measurable. It won't going to move forward. Oh, that's fab. I got one last question for you. So,
Sure.
like, we large language models, Gen AI is sort of like it's hot. What's your view on this and what it means to your industry, your company?
I mean, with these language models, I think a lot of people want to use it just because they want to use it,
Oh yeah, it's like cool.
and that's one of the things that I get asked all the time, and I'm like, listen, go back, let's see what's your business problem. Do you really need it? If you do need it, if you because sometimes you get things get lost in track if you don't start with a business problem. You
Hmm.
get too carried away with the tools.
Yep.
It becomes a nice to have. You're never gonna get that stakeholder buy-in because
Hmm.
it doesn't bring the value. So always start with a business problem. Always, like you said, start with the value. But these tools, they'll come and go, and there'll be something else in a few months or a few years. I'm not sure. So I don't get carried away with tools. I always get carried away with what can it solve a problem for me? If
Got
it
it.
doesn't, do we really need it or not? I'm a big user of all of these, but to terms of where can we employ this?
All right. So when someone comes and say, "Hey, we got this great tool," first thing you're say, "So tell me what problem we're going to solve."
Exactly. Yes. Or why do I need it?
Why do I need this? Tell me again.
Because
But it's
I have
cool.
a long list of problems that, if we can match it to any of these problems, let's do it. But I'm not going to just invest in a tool just because it's cool or everybody's doing it.
Got it. Very, very pragmatic sort of view, May. I love it. I love it. So, any last bits of advice for the CDO audience?
Sure. I think one of the things that I always mention to our management or to our teams as well is, whenever you're running a data program, whenever you're working on any transformation, be it digital, data, whatever, always start with the people. Never start with the technology or this cool, generative AI or things like that, because you might spin your wheels and then people won't use it or people not buying into it. So it's always about the transformation, especially data transformations. You start with people, and then you will reap the value. When we did the data ambassadors program, I started with the people. I taught those people, and then we gave them the tools. So tools comes last, technology comes last. It's people first agenda always.
Course. Love it. Love it. Today's digital transformation, you got to start with people.
Yes.
That's sort of the punchline on this one. Well, this is fabulous. Thank you, May, for joining me today. This is a ton of fun, and please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. It's been a pleasure, May. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Ben, and it was great being here. Thank you.